So, I'm a big fan of indie titles, especially in the last 5 to 10 years. I think I'd go as far as saying recently more indie games have caught my attention over AAA games. Now, this topic may be a bit misleading because I don't necessarily think one is better than the other, since that is such a very subjective opinion. But for me personally, AAA games haven't excited me as much as indie titles. I feel that lately AAA games have all these cinematics. They're so expensive to make. They bring in, expensive voice actors and actors, and I don't know, to me personally, they just haven't caught my eye. It seems like they just all have a very similar premise. If I think right now as far as what's coming up in 2023, I don't think I could possibly give you many AAA games that I'm excited about. And even in the last 50 games that I've played, I could name more indie games than I can name AAA games that have made an impact to me personally that I've spent more hours in. I wanted to do the least possible research on this topic and video game titles because I wanted to see if off the top of my head I could recall which of the two I've had a better experience with and which has left a bigger impact on my opinions. So off the top of my head, I wrote this list down, but indie games that I've played recently in the last few years that have made me more in love with video games over AAA games like the game Inside, Slay the Spire, because I'm a big card game fan, a big TCG fan, and I think this game is amazing. Dicey Dungeon is an amazing game. One Step from Eden, it's very Mega Man Battle Network like, such a fun game. Into the Breach, games like Neon White they're so visually simplistic, but there's such a charm to it, and the playstyle is just so fun, amazing. It just keeps making you want to go back and play another round, play another game, which can be said even more about Vampire Survivors, a game that looks like Gauntlet from the NES, but it's just such an amazing, fun game that just gets you hooked. I've played Vampire Survivors, a $2-3 game, more than I've played Modern Warfare Call of Duty 2, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, the remaster or remake, that cost $70. I've played this, small little indie game for way longer than I played Modern Warfare 2. And of course, all of this is based more on your opinion of what's a good game and what your preference for gaming is. But I don't know, for somebody like myself who I've always loved AAA games, Call of Duty Black Ops, Black Ops 2, Modern Warfare 2, Modern Warfare 3, the originals on the 360 are some of my favorite games of all time. But I don't know, maybe it's just the saturation of how many games we get of the same genre. Just recently, I've just enjoyed these smaller, more like quirky games because there's something so charming about them. And I haven't even mentioned like the big hitter indie games that are kind of, bigger than your average indie game. Games like Cuphead that have really revolutionized the genre with its amazing, hand-drawn graphics, old school 1920s cartoon, and such a difficult game but so fun because it makes you just keep wanting to play more and more. Games like Hollow Knight, games like Hades that have won awards for how amazing these games are. Even a game as recent as Stray that looks visually like a AAA title, but that game was even up for a Game of the Year award. Games like Celeste that have such a deep narrative, and is such a difficult platformer, but once again just keeps making you want to come back and keep playing the game. Games like Stardew Valley that really gave Animal Crossing a run for the best farming sim. Recently games like Cult of the Lamb. Not to mention that some of these indie games are made by a very, very small group of people, or a game like Undertale that had the least amount of people working on a game for such a successful indie title. Or you have games like, Shovel Knight that have a little bit more people working on it, but nowhere near as the AAA budgets. Terraria, Dead Cells. I mean, you kind of know where I'm going with this. These games seem effortless in a way, but there's so much more love put into these games that I think that's the reason why they've attracted me more than AAA titles. Now, don't get me wrong, we've had some amazing AAA titles. Games like Spider-Man, Red Dead Redemption 2, God of War 2018, and Ragnarok. Um, we've had Death Stranding, which I'm personally not a fan of, but I know that a lot of people really liked, and that game is a huge, huge budget game. Games like Elden Ring that won Game of the Year last year, and that game is just pushed the envelope for these Dark Souls games. Um, Games recently like Hogwarts Legacy that I personally love. Uh, you know, Controversy aside, it is a very fun AAA game. But that's kind of my problem right now is that this list of AAA games are kind of the ones that stand out to me the most at the moment. I can't think back to too many more games that I've played in the last few years that have really made an impact on my view of video games in the AAA department. Horizon also is a great game. I didn't play the new one, but Horizon Zero Dawn is one of my all-time favorite games as well. And I know I'm leaving out a lot of titles. I'm not trying to name every single game. I know there's games like Ghost of Tsushima, Deathloop. Those are big games that I actually haven't played myself. But what I'm trying to get at is that it feels like AAA games are losing some of that love. Like you don't see the love being put into them the way that it used to feel. And I feel like I'm getting a lot more of that from these indie titles where they're not afraid to be different. They're not afraid to push the envelope in a different direction. They're not afraid to experiment. And I feel like if AAA games or companies making these huge games that are millions of dollars can maybe put a little bit more energy into changing the formula up, I feel like we can get amazing games. And speaking of, for this year, for example, I actually, in general, there's not that many games that I can think of from the top of my head in each department, actually, but there are a few. For the AAA department, we have Spider-Man 2 that I'm really, really excited about, probably my most anticipated game of the year. But that's also because I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. We have Starfield that, I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of 50-50 about it. It looks really good, but I'm kind of thinking that we might get a No Man's Sky situation with this one, or a Death Stranding situation where it could be hit or miss. You either love it, or you kind of think it's meh. Now there isn't too many indie games either in 2023 that I can think of from the top of my head. At least not too many in terms of quantity, but there are a few that I'm really excited about. Silksong being a big one, Sea of Stars, Hellscreen, but quite possibly my most anticipated indie game of the year right now is a game called The Plucky Squire that just looks amazing. Maybe I'll make a video just talking about that game separately, but I've seen a lot of other indie games that I can't think of that look really good that I know I'm gonna check out. But at the end of the day, it really all again comes down to preference. Possibly 2023 maybe just isn't a great year for gaming, but there is an elephant in the room, and I purposely did not mention Nintendo in any of this conversation because to me Nintendo is just a very different topic. I'm a little biased because I'm a huge Nintendo fan, and whether it's AAA, expensive titles like Tears of the Kingdom, or little smaller indie games or just smaller games in general that Nintendo does, I pretty much love almost everything they do. So that's the main reason I haven't talked about, Nintendo games in this discussion. But let me know what you guys think. Do you guys like indie games more, AAA games? What games are you excited for this year? Leave a comment down below, and as always, thank you for watching.